We can't remain the same and expect our lives to be different. So if you want something you've never had, you've got to do something you've never done.
This is I Did It. It's insights from people who have done something they never thought they would do. And today's guest, well, he is a managing director. He's a general manager. He's a non-executive director. I'll take a breath. And he's also the host of the podcast called Procurement Talk. Welcome, David Byrne.
Thanks very much, Julian, for having me.
Yeah, right. Look, let's jump straight in. Now, people can listen to that intro, and so many of us get intimidated by titles, and we think, I'm not that sort of person. I couldn't do all that. But I know that you're a regular sort of bloke, just like me. I'm a regular sort of a bloke. And both you and I weren't always doing what we are doing now. And I want to talk about that and about what you thought and about what you did to be the change that you wanted to see in your life. So can you just to help us set up your story in a way that can launch us into some of these different paths that you've taken?
Sure. Thanks, Julian. In my early 20s, and I didn't really do a great deal in my early 20s, and I got to that stage in my life where I just wanted more. Uh, and I think we all eventually get to that stage at some point in time. And I was at the time married. I had two young children. I was working shift work and didn't really see much of a real future associated with that. So I decided to go back to university and study and get a degree. And what I did was I started looking through the newspaper. And I'm one of those old guys that still buys newspapers. Eh, Still love them. And I looked through the job section and I started looking for jobs that I thought I wanted to do anyway. And each job that I thought I wanted to do required a formal education. And so I thought, I need to do the hard yards and go and get that. And so that kicked off a 7-year grind for me to get a degree. And that really changed my life in significantly. I then got another job after that degree, and my salary started to increase, and it started to put me into rooms and opportunities that previously didn't exist. And so that was a real launching pad for me quite a few years ago. And since then, I've just continued to look for opportunities and do things to better myself and and look for things that interest me and really drive me. And so that's led me to do a bunch of other things as life has gone on. And years ago, I started a podcast series, and I was working away, and I was away 3 nights a week, and this great Irish pub across the road from the hotel, and like all good places, that's where I was having a beer, and I thought, if I don't do something different, I'm going to end up in this pub every night for those 3 nights that I'm away. So that's when I started my podcast series, and uh, we launched the 100th episode this week. So it's taken me 6 series to get to the 100 episodes, but I finally got there, and that's just something that I never thought I'd do. And I actually am thankful to you, Julian, for helping me in those early days and launching that, and that was really good, and I really do appreciate your help in getting that off the ground. But here I am, 100 episodes down, 6 series. We're in the throes of planning for Series 7 next year now. So, yeah, I just do all sorts of different things. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
That,
that's just the way life has rolled.
Yeah, look, there's so much to bounce off there. While it's in my head, that idea, I've forgotten that you said that you were in the bar because that was because I travelled as well when I was, in my TV days as a cameraman, and that was always the rule of thumb that we sort of talked about. There were two, like, you had to be very careful. You would end up you could end up sitting in the motel room counting the bricks in the wall, or or you'd end up at a bar and basically pissing your life away. So you know, and but that's interesting because there's always a trigger. You know, there's always a trigger that sets us off on a path. And, you know, I always like to say that change is not a process, change is a decision. And whether that's you're just driving home in the traffic one day or sitting on the bus and you just go, stuff it, enough is enough. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's actually when the change happens. And the rest is just the process that rolls out afterwards. It sounds like it's just what happened to you.
That's exactly right. I mean, I kickstarted that initiative, yeah, sitting in a bar, and uh, they did a great Guinness pie, right? And typical Irish pub, and it was a great pub, but I just didn't want to spend too much time there. I do like a beer, and so I had to consciously make sure that I didn't get myself locked in there. And you know, I started that podcast series, and to be totally honest, I recorded my first 3 episodes, and they're absolutely terrible. I crafted them out in such a way that it sounded like I was badly reading the news, and it was just terrible. So I had to work through that and find a format that actually worked for me. And now that I've nailed that format, it just works so easy, and it's so fluid when you actually sit down and run through a podcast now and do an episode. And I keep my podcasts relatively short, between the 5 and 10 minutes. They're slightly longer if I have guests on board, and I've had national and international guests come on board. Uh, but I just try to keep them relatively short and punchy, and that seems to have worked for me.
Now, let's just go back to that stage when, you know, around you're sitting in the bar and you went, no, I can't do this. I'm going to start a podcast. Now, I mean, I know that you knew nothing about podcast. You know, you barely knew what a podcast was back then. But then, you know, there's all these questions about, well, you know, like, I mean, my gig is procurement. Who would listen to a podcast on procurement? So talk me through those initial thoughts and how that's played out.
Yeah, I commonly tell people that if you're having trouble sleeping, listen to my podcast, because procurement is such a dry subject, and whilst it's a critical process, and um, yeah, it's a function that I've been involved in for most of my life, so it's something that I hold on to dearly. But it is a very dry subject to a large degree. But what I've done in my podcast series, well, I've also blended a lot of my business experience that I've had over the years into my podcast. So it's not just purely driven around the procurement function and the various activities around that. It also uh, links out to a range of other business activities, whether or not that's motivating staff, um, finding a mentor, all sorts of things that to me are really helpful for anyone on their journey in a business, because businesses are challenging. We have to roll up each day, and some days it works and some days it doesn't, and we all need some guidance and support along the way. And that's why I vary the podcast, so it's not just purely about procurement. It does cater to a wide variety of business related activities that just principally there just to support someone and give someone some guidance on how best to manage their working life, but also their personal life as well. Yeah.
So what about fear of criticism when you first started and you thought, well, who am I? I mean, I'm not. Will you tell me? Did you think, who am I to speak to the world about procurement?
Uh, yeah, very good point, Julian. Thank you. That is a fear, and I think we all live with that fear. And I think that fear continues with us because we all are fairly self-critical of each yourself. Is there's only a couple of people I think aren't self-critical, and but
Well, they're probably
it's easy.
psychopaths. That's the problem.
One of them's running for president, but that's another story. Uh, it's easy to be self-critical, and I think you just need to work through that. And yes, I did have those questions, and I still really question. Really, how could someone listen to my voice? But um, here I am, 100 episodes in. I get very good feedback from my listeners. It's in 57 countries now, and um, on I think 43 platforms globally. So it's gone very, very well, and it has been surprising at how well it's done. But I think the confidence issue, and I do a couple of episodes on confidence through my podcast series, and I think that's a really good point that people do get self-conscious about. Uh, Succeeding, and whether or not somebody will like me, or is this going to be a success, or and they're all natural, but I'm a firm believer that the sun rises each day, and you've got a choice when you slip your feet out from underneath the covers and they touch the ground for the first time each day. You've got a choice on how you actually tackle your day. You can either embrace it and give it a full hard crack, or you can you know feel sorry for yourself. Well, yep, things that aren't always going to work. Things aren't always going to be successful, and it's about learning from those and just putting them to one side and moving forward. So I really love to embrace my day and attack it with a lot of passion, no matter what I'm doing. And so I think that's an important part with actually finding that confidence and doing new things. And so, yeah, I think that's very important.
So, how is that criticism or fear of criticism actually played out? So, I mean, because I know that on the opposite side of criticism, you've actually had people reach out with opportunities to you. But you know that in our head, and that people pleasing we want to do. Oh, people won't like me, and I'll go on and we get a negative comment. Just tell me, did that actually manifest and play out?
I think it does, Julian. I think we all do get that at various times, and whether or not the criticism is, um,
Yeah, so what I'm
I,
actually getting at is that, did people actually criticize you? Did you get people writing in, calling in, going, Dave, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. You shouldn't be doing this. Did that actually happen?
no,
Right.
I don't get people that actually write in and say to me that. Most of the criticism has been in my head,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and and Uh, and, and most of this, well, the self doubt has always been in my head about whether or not I could actually do this and pull this off, and whether or not it'll be a success. Um, I think if somebody openly criticizes you, well, and I have experienced poor professional behaviour, and I think we all do in some form in the workplace, um, and especially from executives that. Yeah, it's really poor form, and it's very disappointing behaviour. So having experienced poor professional behaviour, I'm very conscious that I just don't give that any airtime anymore. And when um, I, I set up a company many years ago that went on to be very, very successful, um, and as part of that, they showed me the door as soon as I got it up and running for them. And that was poor professional behaviour on their behalf and how they actually did that. And I got upset about it for 3 days, and I gave them 3 days, and I thought, no, that's it. I'm not going to be worried about that anymore. And I just don't. I just think, no, they're those individuals are just, poor. They show a few values and are disappointing. So I just don't let that sort of thing get to me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree that you allow yourself a couple of days for a pity party. I mean, pity party is always is always good, but there's just a shut off time, and as you say, you get back to it. So, just back to this criticism. I don't I don't want to stay on this forever, but it's just so important because when we start, if it what this picture we paint in our head generally never actually materializes. It is just this story in our head, and the rest of the world is going on with this business. And you just have this enormous Hollywood drama in your head that this is all not going to work, and it actually doesn't happen. And I always reckon when it comes to doing something on just like we are, just showing up now and doing this imperfectly, if you were to do this in the real world, if you were to walk into a room of, say, 20 people, and 19 of those people went, yeah, oh, yeah, not a bad bloke. And one of them said, oh, I just can't stand him, can't stand the sound of his voice tone. You just go, well, that's great, eh? 19 people like me. Well, he didn't. But we bring that back online, and somebody leaves one slightly negative comment. It just goes, oh, like it cuts right in. But it's just crazy. I mean, we can't please everyone, but we can get this in our head that that's actually our job to do.
I mean, having spent a lot of time in the corporate world, incidents would evolve, and you would go home at night and you will think through those scenarios, and you will just plan through all those scenarios, and it just consumes your sleep. And then you get up the next day and absolutely none of them happen. Absolutely none of them happen. And the business just rolls on. And you've consumed your waking and non-waking hours with just these scenarios going through your head that just aren't going to happen and don't happen. And so it's very easy to get lost in those sorts of issues in your mind, and to let them in and then create scenarios in your head that just don't exist. So it's not worth doing. And I'm very conscious that I just try to push them to one side.
We are curious creatures, that is for sure. I just want to go back a bit in your story to where you decided that you wanted to go back to university and to get your qualifications, get your degree. Uh, you can't do that alone. I mean, as in that if you're living with a family, they have to come along on the journey with you. And, going back and studying while you've got full time employment, creates stresses. So, what would you recommend to somebody who may be thinking about doing this? How to manage that family dynamic along the way?
Yeah, well, first of all, don't do what I did. If you can get away from it, go and do uni after you finish high school. But that didn't work out, and it's not going to work out
Yeah.
for everyone because you most people don't know what they want to do when they finish high school, and they end up doing a degree which doesn't really work for them. And so it took me a bit of a journey to get there. I think that is a balancing act, Jules, and it's not as simple. I used to start studying at 8:30 at night once the kids had gone to bed, and work through. And it is a balance. It's difficult. It's challenging. It's the hardest thing I've done in my life, without a doubt. Balancing that, because it does have some challenges. I mean, I did my degree via correspondence, which back then we didn't have the internet. They used to send you just a huge pile of books that you had to read, and so it was a different learning back then. But I think it is about taking the family on the journey and them all understanding that you're doing this, and this will result in a better life for everyone moving forward, and that you know you're doing that particular, and it's a sacrifice, and it really is a sacrifice and a bloody tough one at times. uh, you know, you want to go out, but then you've got to study and those sorts of commitments and exams, and you might have to take time off work to and chew into annual leave so you can go and do exams because some employers aren't as helpful as what they could be. And so I think all those challenges associated with it, um, you just really need to take the family on the journey, and the end result is what we're looking for, and we're looking for better opportunities as a result after that. And you know, I can 100% stand up and say I wouldn't have got the opportunities or the doors that wouldn't have opened for me if I didn't do that. Um, I think one of the interesting ways I did it, I didn't do the best in high school. I wasn't the most studious of students. And so I did a degree a little bit backwards, and I applied to do a subject uh, and I passed that subject. So then they let me into the next course. And so it wasn't a straightforward, yes, I just put my hand up and they'll let me in. Uh, but it shows a determination, I think, that you want to succeed. And I think that whole support network around you is an integral part of actually doing that. And uh, it's amazing the difference when you have someone proofread your work who gives you some honest feedback in the direction you're headed, and that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Did you ever come close to quitting?
Yeah, a few times. Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I had some really, really. I failed a subject twice, and that really hurt. And it just, yeah,
Yeah.
I just
So
pushed
yeah,
through
you
it
know
and
what you're
got
saying
home.
before about sacrifice. It's so true. I got the saying, everybody pays. We look at
Yeah,
people, beyond the shiny success story is always a story of sacrifice. But the story is very, very similar. But the currency that we pay that sacrifice in changes for each of us. But there's always has to be sacrifice if you want to change.
yeah, and that was a really tough time. I mean, just if you and for those people who have gone to university and done, spend all this time, and you've gone through countless hours of reading, and then you submit assignments, and then you sit in the exam, and it doesn't go your way, and then you back then I had to pay for the course up front too. The HEX wasn't around, so I had to pay the money again, and I had to redo it, and it was just that simple. And I just had to work harder, and that was one of the things that I did learn from it. I learned that sometimes I thought I was kidding myself when I thought I could just walk in and do it. And in reality, I hadn't done the work. And if you don't do the work, um, you're not going to get it. I'm a big fan of the saying "hard work works" because it does. You just got to do the work. And if you think you can wing it, sometimes you can, but there are very, very few situations, and you do get exposed very, very quickly if you haven't done the hard work.
Yeah, yeah. So, Dave, if there is, have you got any little, tips or ideas or mantras that you sort of live your life by now for doing things that you never thought you may do?
Um, uh, Besides hard work works, yes. I, I I do like the number 12 because there's 12 letters in the word perseverance, and so I think that's really, really important that you just persevere with something. And I do like the mantra, "Good things come to those that go and get them."
Yeah.
So y- if you're sitting at home thinking someone's going to pick up the phone and call me and give me this fantastic opportunity, no, it just doesn't happen. You have to go and get that, um, good things do come to those that go and get them, and that's going to mean sacrifice. It's going to mean change. It means you're going to have to pick up the phone. It means you're going to have to try and learn a new skill. It means you're going to have to do something, and if you don't do that, well, you're just not going to get what you want. Um,
Yeah, no one's coming to
yeah,
rescue you. You know,
no,
we all hope, but it's
no,
just never going to happen.
I wanted to get on some boards. Well, I went and did a company directors course.
Yeah.
You know, I then went and had to apply for board positions. And, and people don't come running to you. There are um, those very few people in the world that are born into that. But for the vast majority of us, we have to do something. And so if you want the change, if you want to embrace something, if you want to go and do something, well, it doesn't come to you. You've got to do it. You're the one that's got to pick up the phone, research a course, find a job. I mean, um, I love reading newspapers. I like reading motivational books. I think there's some good tools out there that you can do to help you and to uh, present opportunities for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Dave. If people want to get in contact with you, how should they do it?
Um, well, there's a couple of ways. My consulting company, BWD Consulting.
Oh, okay. Now,
Uh,
hang on. We have to tell people that what BWD consulting comes from. Tell them that.
yeah, the so when we were starting my company, um, N- nothing rhymes with procurement, right? Okay, so right, it's just not a good one. So we ended up starting with BWD, and BWD stands for Big Wave Dave. And and the person on the other end of this microphone, Julian, said that to me once when I was out catching very very small waves surfing on Big Wave Dave.
And
Um,
that's
I,
stuck.
I do
He's always been known as Big Wave Dave since then.
well, and it's a great icebreaker. Um, I don't
Yeah,
take
and
myself that
that
seriously.
is such a good learning point to end on here. You know, if you're starting a business, to have some sort of organic backstory that you can use exactly as an icebreaker is so powerful.
Yeah, and it 99% of the time it comes up. And people say, "Oh, because my name is David Byrne. How does that work in your name?" And I said, "Oh, no, it stands for Big Wave Dave." And so it is a great communicator in meetings where you just need that icebreaker and you just want to kickstart a conversation, and people have a bit of a giggle about it, and okay, uh, and then we move forward. So if you do want to contact me, you can always go to my website at bwdconsulting.com.au. My podcast series, Procurement Talk with David Byrne, also has links and emails and phone numbers associated with it. Yeah.
Dave, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, and I don't know, might have another one time. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Julian. Thanks very much for having me, and all the very best. Talk soon. Cheers.